Everyone. A certain Mr. Zuko Mdwaba was the first participant that showed up as attendee this morning. So welcome, Zuko. Great to see you this morning. We've got lots of people streaming into the virtual doors, but I'll just welcome people for another minute or so as people come in, and we'll go to the official start. But please hop over to the chat. Set your setting to all panelists and attendees. That's a little bit of admin, and probably the only admin I'll give you today as attendees. It's at the bottom where you can set your settings to all panelists and attendees, and then please just let us know who you are, where you work, and this is also the place that you're going to be asking all your wonderful questions. We've got some experts in the house today, so you'll be well advised to bring in all your questions today. So just one more reminder, at the bottom of your chat box it says to, and then you can change all panelists to all panelists and attendees. That means everyone can see who you are and what your questions are. So with having said that, and also not wanting to waste too much time, the people that come a bit later will be able to see the start in the recording. We're going to start officially. So your employees' expectations continue to evolve, which means it isn't enough to ask for feedback only in times of crisis or as an afterthought. Improving the employee experience needs to be a core part of your organizational strategy. So welcome again. My name is Joel Ulrich, and I'm the Managing Director of CHRO South Africa. So, as I said already to the guys who came in early, please say hi in the chat. Set your setting to all attendees and panelists, and please don't be shy to use the chat throughout the hour to pop in all your questions. We'll try to get to all of them if we possibly can. So, in this webinar, we're fortunate to have two absolute experts who will unpack the topic of employee expectations and share their insights and practical advice. You can see them on the screen. We've got Nicola van Tonder. She is the HR Operations Manager at Doherty. We're giving practical local insight into the employee experience.
Joel, we see your script, not the slide, just for you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. That's a very good call. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share. Well, you can read with me, but not anymore. There's no secrets in the script, luckily, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the very attentive man that helped me just now is Richard Doherty, backed by popular demand. He was also on one of our webinars last year, and he's the Senior Director at Workday. Before we get going with Richard, just a general shout out to Workday, which has really been an incredible supporter of the CHRO South Africa and the HR and our network communities. So thank you, Zuko Mdwaba, and your team for partnering with us ever since you started making waves here in South Africa. Something interesting to know about Workday is that they recently acquired a super cool employee feedback tool called Peakon. And that's something we'll be hearing a bit more about this morning, specifically in Richard's presentation. So I think you've heard enough of me now. You've already seen my notes on screen, so I'll rather hand over to Richard.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joel. Let me see if I can share the right screen. Please confirm that I've got it right. And let's share. There we go. Joel, does that look good? You can see my slide?
Yeah, you're very professional.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this session on which we've entitled Great Expectations, where we're going to share some research with you, which will reveal some of the top priorities of what your employees are thinking. Just a quick safe harbor slide here. You know, the future's uncertain and plans can change, so please keep that in mind as I present and talk about technology and this subject area. So so my name's Richard Doherty. I'm based in London, where actually our summer is starting as you are moving into your winter. So it is a beautiful day here today, but the weather has previously been awful. So I'm very happy to be with you today. I'd much rather be in South Africa, of course. Used to go, before the pandemic, 2 or 3 times a year, and always loved coming to your country. So hopefully, next year I'll be able to come back again. And I've been with Workday for just over 6 years, and I've worked in the HR tech space for just over 20 years. So, HR technology and employee experience really are two of my key passions. When we look at, back to last year, and last year is where the research comes from, right? It's looking at data from 2020. It's really, clearly it's really changed us. Massive changes in our societies and the way we work and our personal lives. A lot of us who were able to shifted to working from home. For many of us, that was the first time we've worked from home for any sort of consistently long period of time. A lot of us, probably felt physically disconnected. We've had to learn how to operate in a virtual environment, and the topic of mental well-being has been top of mind for everyone. As we've had to go through this very difficult time. I think there's been a lot of transformation in the last year. Whole industries have transformed either to thrive, to grasp a new opportunity that the pandemic delivered, or either to survive as the pandemic has shut down their normal way of operating. And this transformation has been driven by the adoption of new technology. And what we're also beginning to see, particularly out of the US, which I suppose is the most advanced economy and an advanced country in terms of coming out of the pandemic with their high levels of vaccination, is that as economies are beginning to restart, the competition for talent is really hotting up. And also beginning to see a lot of employee turnover in the US as industries are competing for the same talent. I think as well, one of the other big things in 2020 was that we became, much more aware as individuals. There's a lot of social unrest, which emanating from the tragic killing of George Floyd in the US. And it's really led to much more of a focus on inequality, diversity, and inclusion, and these have become board-level topics around the world. So a lot has changed, and I think that our organisations, we're all racing towards this new normal at different speeds, and we'll arrive at that destination of the new normal at different times. But we all know we're going to have to adapt, and we're all thinking about what should our priorities be, and how are we going to have to change, and how is HR going to support that change? And it's around things like making hybrid work. Hybrid work seems to be the future. Sometimes in the office, sometimes at home, and we're planning that. Some of us are already back in the office. Nicola is in the office today. I'm working from home. My office is still closed, but organisations are planning that return to the office and reinventing how to manage this hybrid workforce. I think as well, as we race to this new normal, there's a recognition that our organisations need to be able to adapt quickly to change. And it's not just reacting to change, it's more about designing organisations that can continually align the workforce with business needs. So having this adaptive, shape-shifting organisation, putting the structures in place that facilitate that. And of course, as well, it's all about ensuring diversity. And it's not only the right thing to do, it makes business sense. More diverse companies outperform non-diverse companies, and there's lots of research that supports that. So if we think about our employees, we have all this change swirling around the employees. And so I think it's so important, more important than ever, to consider the needs of our employees and to really try and understand where they are with their thoughts. What are they thinking? And a good way of looking at this, I think, is to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I'm sure everyone in HR is familiar with, but it's all about trying to understand what motivates people. And at the base level, it's about do we have to, as a human, to be motivated? Do I have food? Do I have money? Do I have warmth? Moving up to, do I feel safe? Am I in a safe environment? Do I have job security? Moving up to, do I feel part of a community? Do I have good relationships with people around me? Moving up to the level of esteem. Do I feel respect within my community? Am I developing? Am I able to use my skills and develop those skills? All the way up to the peak of the pyramid, self-actualization, where I achieve my full potential and happiness. And if we think about our employees and consider each level of that hierarchy, how are they feeling right now? If we go back a year and think about how many people would have wanted to change jobs as the pandemic hit, I don't think many people would have wanted to change jobs, because there were probably concerns over the safety level there in the hierarchy, and that was reflected. An example of where I am in London, a pub advertised sort of at the end of the first lockdown, a pub where the pub started opening again here. They advertised for a bar staff, so a entry-level, low-paid position, one bar staff, and they got over 400 applications for that one position. Fast forward now to last week, they cannot get any candidates now. As the pubs have started opening here again, they cannot get any candidates. So they're having to incentivize existing staff to refer. They're even reaching out to customers to get them to refer staff. So a total change in the dynamic. And as and I think we can look at the broader economy as our individual economies, which will be happening at different speeds, of course, around the world, but we will all come out and our economies will start building up again. We can expect to see these huge turnovers because employees, their physiological and their safety needs are satisfied. But if they're not comfortable from a love and belonging and an esteem perspective, if they're not getting those elements, and I'll talk about what those are from an employment perspective in a minute, if those are not being satisfied, they'll go somewhere else to get those needs satisfied, because otherwise they won't be motivated. So if we map Maslow's hierarchy onto the employee experience, because at the moment I think it's really important to be focused on the employee experience. Otherwise, at some point down the road, you're going to suffer from potentially high levels of attrition. And also, when we talk about employee experience, I'm going to tie this back in a moment to the employee expectations and share with you the research, because you need to make sure that your employee experience is well aligned with the expectations of the workforce. Now, employee experience has many different influences. It's partly the technology that people use when they go to work. It's about the culture of your organization. It's about how they're managed, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to cover all those different elements today. I'm going to focus very much on sort of HR and how technology can help manage that employee experience. And if we map the employee experience onto Maslow's hierarchy, I think HR, you need to make sure that those basic needs at the bottom of the hierarchy, which I've tagged here as being engaged, as engaging the workforce, need to be covered. And what does that mean? So if we look at sort of from a HR system perspective, you need to make it easy for your employees to view a pay slip. You need to make it easy for them to book holiday. You need to provide that basic self-service, so you get the basic stuff done easily. It needs to be available on their mobile device or through a browser. You need to make it easy for them to find answers to the questions that they have related to HR policy, holidays, and so on and so forth. So you need, that's the base level. Okay, if from a HR perspective, we need to cater to those things. Once those basic needs are met, we move up one level to empathizing with the employee, which is all about sort of helping to ensure their physical and psychological well-being within your organization. And that will involve things like providing benefits for healthcare, potentially for counseling, and making it easy to access those, making it transparent in terms of what's available to the employees. Don't make it difficult for them to access these services. But it's also about listening to the employees and acting on what you hear. So there's no point doing an annual survey and then not acting on the results of that. And also an annual survey, to be honest with you, because the world is changing so quickly, is almost a waste of time nowadays. We need to move to sort of a continuous listening capability where we are continually taking the pulse of the employees. Once we've empathized with the employees, we move one level up in the hierarchy and we've satisfied those physiological needs. We move on to almost embracing the employee, making them feel a sense of belonging and community within our organization. And we need to do that for every single employee. No one should be left behind. Which leads us on to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why that is a topic in every boardroom. Why organisations are executing programs around this to embrace every single employee within the organisation. And a great place to start is to really try and understand where are you today. Look at the key metrics around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So at least you have a baseline. And I'm sure all your organisations have been doing this for years anyway. But it's about pulling together all the data that you have in your organisation, pulling that together also with the employee sentiment to get an idea of where are you, where are the problem areas, where should you focus your strategic programs. So that requires a lot of analytical capability within HR to be able to do that effectively. Once the employee feels embraced, we then need to make sure that they feel empowered. And it's all about empowering employees to manage their careers, to help guide their development. And also, of course, and remember, empowered, that maps onto the self-esteem. We need to make sure that employees are rewarded for the impact that they're having on your organization, and empower employees to make that next step in their career. And again, HR technology will play a key role in enabling that with learning capabilities, with talent management, with reward, with managing feedback, and so on and so forth. And then once we've satisfied those 4 levels in the hierarchy there, we can elevate the employees to that self-actualization, or to make them feel energized, so that they bring their best self to work, that they are maximizing their potential. And from a HR and HR tech perspective, we need to we need the employees to feel that they have that they've got access to personalized information, so that they can truly achieve their potential and perform effectively. So where systems, and the only really way you can do that is for an organization of any sort of size, is to have technology that is data driven, that is creating a contextual experience for an employee. It's recommending learning to them, it's recommending job opportunities, it's recommending mentors to them, and so on and so forth, so that they have this complete bespoke, almost consumer-like experience, but that's focused on them and focused on helping them achieve their true potential. If you can do all of that, then this will create really a remarkable experience for the employee. And it's not easy to do all of that, of course, and it's a journey that you need to go on. But I think those are the areas that you need to focus on. And throughout that employee experience, it's so important. The world is changing around us, and I think that living in a world of change, that's not going to disappear. So we need to be constantly listening to employees to understand the sentiment, understand what they're feeling, what they're thinking. And 2020 really showed us that is absolutely essential. We need to elevate the voice of the employee. Otherwise, all our efforts in building out that employee experience may well go to waste. So let's focus on continuous listening. So the case for listening is, if we look at engagement, engagement is one of the key metrics that organizations will try and measure through the engagement surveys, and because engagement is a leading indicator of employee attrition. So if we can identify early that engagement is dropping, we can act early to mitigate that attrition risk, and therefore initiate programs that address whatever the problem is. Perhaps it's poor management, so we need to train our managers to be better managers. And then through that continuous listening, we can really see almost in real time the impact that our programs are having on engagement. And if it's not working, we can change it. But the idea is that we can then run off or stop that decline in engagement, so that we don't hit that big attrition that typically follows dropping engagement levels. And this is where, continuous listening, this is where technology companies like Peakon, which is a company that Workday acquired in April of this year, which is an intelligent listening or a continuous listening technology that is intelligently surveying employees on a continuous basis, a question here, a question there, giving you the opportunity to really understand and take the pulse of the employees. Now, Peakon, a Workday company, it publishes each year, and this is the second year that it's done it, because it's a relatively young company, research based upon all of that survey data that they've collected across their companies, obviously with the permission of all the companies, and the data is anonymized, but it's a huge volume of data that they're able to draw on. So that, more than, this is just for 2020, more than 165 million survey responses, more than 30 million comments that were typed into those surveys across over 160 countries around the world. So this really gives us the ability to draw out insights in terms of employee expectations, what they're thinking for a global audience. So it's tremendously interesting data. And some of the results are actually quite obvious, but it's based on data rather than us assuming that something is happening, or something, that something is important to our employees. And you can download this report go to peakon.com, and you can download that report for free. But in the next sort of 5 minutes or so, I'm just going to highlight some of the key takeaways from that 100 million plus survey data and the insights that it's popped up and the key trends that it's identified from organizations around the world. And we've identified 4 key trends that I want to share with you today. So the first key trend was that employees left 38% more comments about diversity, equity, and inclusion in 2020 than they did in the previous year. And the conversation specifically around racial equality in organizations more than doubled after the summer of 2020, which is when we had the murder of George Floyd. So yes, we probably thought it was going to be more important for a lot of people, but it has been massively important for employees around the world. They want their organizations to become more equitable, more diverse places, and that's been reflected in the survey responses. But it's not just been about racial equality. Gender equality is also top of mind for employees. It's been overtaken in the middle of the year in summer 2020, some European summer, I should say. I'm talking about that. But in June last year, it's been overtaken by racial equality, but gender equality also remains top of mind. So I think as you are looking at your employee experience, having programs in place that are making your organizations fairer, more equitable, more inclusive, are business critical. Otherwise, employees are not going to get that sense of love and belonging within your organization. They're not going to feel embraced. Okay. The second key trend is around health and well-being, and we can see that the negative effects of the pandemic on employee well-being have been compounded with each lockdown. So you can see there in March last year, we saw a steady increase in comments around well-being. And then sort of around September, October, when many countries around the world went into a second lockdown, there was an even steeper increase in terms of the proportion of employees who were mentioning health and well-being in their survey responses. And our data shows that the proportion of employee comments concerning well-being increased by 46% in 2020 compared to the previous year. Now, mental health was top of mind, as you can see there. From sort of April, mental health was the predominant concern during the early stages of the pandemic, sort of in April, May, June, and then it's tailed off a little bit, but it's remained high. But there's been more of an increase as we've moved through the pandemic around financial wellness. What's interesting is actually the concerns around physical wellness, as you can see, have actually been relatively small. Employees have been much more concerned about the financial and mental wellness or well-being. So again, as you're looking at the programs you've initiated, how you're supporting your employees, I think this is interesting data to make sure that you're focusing on the right things. The third key topic around flexible working, again, unsurprising, I would say. But the proportion of employee comments concerning flexible work, in 2020 increased, by 125% compared to the previous year. And I think, managers have had to learn how to manage virtually. Employees have struggled to maintain their work-life balance. And I think you have to ask yourself, how have you supported your employees, and how will you continue to support your employees in this area, because they need the support, because this isn't going away. And we really need to focus, as I said earlier, on our strategies for managing what I think is going to be the most common way of working, which is going to be that sort of hybrid workforce. Also, what came out of the data was that during the pandemic, many employees have had to take on lots of extra caring responsibilities. I think homeschooling, caring for elderly relatives, and so on, and the impact has been felt much more significantly around the world by women. So and this is all being reflected by the huge increase in caring related comments in the survey. So I think all of our organizations really need to think hard about how you are supporting your employees as they juggle work and caring responsibilities. It's a key element of their employee experience, and if you're not helping them with that juggling, I think again, as economies pick up, attrition will be a problem. The final, I need to hurry up actually, the final takeaway from the research has been around growth. And when we talk about growth, we mean, do employees feel that they are progressing their career, developing new skills? Are they personally growing? And growth is a key predictor in the Peakon, the Workday company technology, around predicting attrition. So after, and this is showing, the higher the growth number, the better, right? Because people feel that they're growing. And we could see that there was an initial surge as the pandemic hit. People felt they were growing as the pandemic hit because they were having to pick up new skills. They had to adapt. But across the year, professional development has really stagnated. It's a big general trend going down, which will increase flight risk. And there's been a bit of an age divide here. For your Gen Z and millennials, the youngest segment of your workforce, their growth scores have been declining throughout 2020, whereas for Gen X and boomers, which is where I am, there's been a slight increase. So it's really important you put strategies in place so you continue to support development, even in the current situation. For one, clearly you're going to need new skills in the workforce because of the transformation we've been talking about, but also as a retention tool. Those younger members of the workforce, they really need to grow. And it's not just about learning, it's about giving you opportunities, giving them projects to work on, which are going to help them develop new skills, extend their network, and so on and so forth. So in summary, I'm going to hand over to Joel in 1 second. We've talked about the importance of the employee experience. We've compared it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we've talked about how we need to elevate the employee voice and act on what we hear to ensure that that experience is aligned with employee needs. And coming over loud and clear from Peakon's analysis of over 30 million comments, the 4 key concerns of employees around the world are around diversity and inclusion, health and well-being, flexible working, and personal growth. So those, you need to factor those into your HR strategies for the employee experience to ensure that you are providing a platform for your employees to get to the top of that pyramid and really perform at their maximum potential. So let me stop sharing and hand back to Joel.
Very much, Richard. I think I speak for everyone in the room. That was very interesting and quite amazing that it's based on millions of data points as well. And that's it's very hard, something that's very hard to argue with, I think, in that way. So yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm curious to hear from Nicola. Obviously, for a bit more of a local perspective as well. Maybe not everyone knows, but Doherty is an engineering consultancy that recently de-merged from the globally active mother company Peakon. And Nicola, I think that means that you've had to think a lot about what your employees expect, especially now being a new company that already has a legacy, but is building its own new legacy. Can you talk us through some of the lessons that you've learned when thinking through that and implementing some of those thoughts?
Firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this exciting webinar. Good morning to everyone on the call. The last 18 months have been a very interesting time for the HR professionals in Doherty. We were demerging from the global business. We were managing the impact of COVID on our business. We rebranded ourselves as Doherty, and to top it all off, we relocated to new offices. The 1,000 staff members had to move in between the pandemic, between May and July last year. But throughout this time, our focus have always remained on caring for our people and ensuring business continuity and becoming part of the solution. Caring for our people was first and foremost our priority, and not only their safety, health, and well-being, but also ensuring that they're engaged and excited about the new brand and would in turn look after our customers. So how did we do that practically? We communicated with our employees a lot, 3 times a week to be exact. We also added a lot of personal touches. For example, personal messages from the CEO on their birthdays, anniversaries, on great project wins or successfully completing specific projects under very difficult circumstances. We ran competitions, games, and we used fun ways to actually get our employees involved in co-creating this new brand and identity. We ran numerous engagement surveys, and some of the feedback from the surveys were then used to determine the priorities for us as an HR team, for us as a business, and to also create a brand that our employees would be proud to represent. The feedback from the surveys is then also used to update our systems and align the current practices that we have within our business. And really those employees' feedback, the input and the buy-in is really got us where we are today. As Richard mentioned, using intelligent listening is really important, engaging your employees' expectations and making swift work of it to make sure that you are meeting those expectations on a real-time basis.
Thanks, Nicola. And maybe just also going back to what Richard was talking about, sort of 4 key themes jumping out of that research. I'm just curious what sort of comes closest to your experience, and if you could give some examples of that.
Sure, I'll do that. So the psychological safety that Richard talked about, specifically the well-being of our employees and our families, were right up there. As a way to ensure that our employees' voices are heard, the HR team phoned employees who were based at home and that couldn't access or had limited access or no access to computers to actually get their responses to some of the engagement surveys that we were running. Because that was so well received, we actually set up an HR care call center during lockdown levels 4 and 5, where each one of us were assigned employees to check in with them how they're doing. So the HR team were actually phoning up staff members throughout all levels of the company, asking them how they are doing. And it's amazing the feedback that we received, very much aligned with what Richard is saying. Things like DE&I coming up, flexibility, empathy, and financial wellness. Those were definitely some of the themes that emerged through those calls. Even though Doherty, for example, have always been open to a flexible working arrangement, the pandemic really gave us an opportunity to review our current practices, to support our employees in achieving that work-life blend that is becoming so difficult nowadays. So at Doherty, we believe that the flexibility doesn't always mean working from home. We believe that it's working smarter and being creative in the use of your time and technology to still achieve the expectations of your role. Flexibility is important to us, and it helps us to build and maintain a healthy, happy, and engaged workforce. It also is essential in meeting some of our diversity and inclusion aspirations, and it recognizes that work and life have fundamentally changed. So to support this, we encouraged all our employees to answer the following question. What is that one small achievable change that you can make in your workday or week that will enhance that work-life blend? And we called it My Simple Thing. The magic of My Simple Thing was really that it's simple. It's about something personal to each and every employee. It's about themselves. We love it because it started a conversation that takes flexibility from this concept that is buried in an employment contract or a policy to actual real life conversations between individuals, teams, and their managers. Those are just some of the ways that we also try to address some of those themes as they came up.
What I love about that is Richard was talking about annual surveys are a waste of time. You've got to be in continuous conversation. And another thing is what he said immediately after that is you have to act on the feedback, otherwise it's also pointless. And I think what you're talking about is a great example of, like, if you're gonna ask, you also have to do something with it. Do you feel that? And I'm coming to you just now, Richard. Do you feel like you guys have gotten better at that over the last period, Nicola?
Most definitely. I think in the past you would spend a lot of planning time and change management before you roll out a new process or test something else. I think the pandemic taught us, act on it, roll out version 1. You can always, with the feedback that you receive, update the program even further and roll out a version 2 at a later stage. But start by rolling out version 1. Don't take too much time on planning. Be agile and really address the expectation and the need as they arise.
Thanks, Nicola. And also just to the audience, please don't be shy with your questions. I have questions until 6 o'clock, and that's not until when this webinar is. But we've got another 24 minutes on the clock. But please don't be shy. Pop them in the chat, and we'll discuss them here. Richard's obviously 4 main themes coming out of that Peakon research, and as we said, we can't argue with data, but obviously you also speak to clients, you speak internally quite a lot. What are sort of the key themes for you if you had to pick your favorite, so to say?
So yeah, so I'd pick out 2. So one would be around flexible working, and I put that in the bucket of future of work, returning to the workplace, so that sort of theme, and that's top of mind for a lot of the HR leaders that I talk to. They're grappling with how will people work in the future? How, do we need as many offices as we've got today? What is the office going to look like with social distancing and so on and so forth? And I think it's really important to have that continuous listening so that you understand where your employees are. And I'll give you a very fresh example from the company I work for, from Workday. So there's been a lot of good communication from our people and purpose team around what our plans are. Certainly in Europe, I think all of our offices are still currently closed because of the pandemic, but they're constantly communicating with us, letting us know what's changed, what the plans are. And about a month ago, the big communication was around defining what does hybrid work mean, or what will it mean within Workday, and what type of role maps onto what different type of hybrid working. And then, still doing this continuous listening, I think the team began to realize that actually people weren't that bothered about the hybrid working, what it meant. They were actually more worried about well-being, physical well-being, and that varied a lot from location to location. So if you're in an office where you can drive, the concerns around drive to and park, the concerns around physical well-being were minimal. But in the office I go into, which is in central London, where you can't drive to, right? You just can't drive there. There's nowhere to park, So you have to get there by the tube, by the London Underground. Lots and lots of concern from people about when that office is going to open. How often am I going to have to go in? So I think so the listening is really important, because as you plan for this new normal, your strategies are going to have to really vary by different location. And then the other sort of big area that I'm interested in, and that I hear a lot from our customers, is around the growth. So making sure that employees are continuing to develop, that they're picking up new skills. And I think that's an area that can be a real massive win-win for organizations, because we know that if employees feel like they're growing, they're more likely to stay with you. We also know that through all the transformation that's going on, the technology disruption, automation, AI, people's jobs are changing dramatically. And there's the World Economic Forum's Future Jobs Report from 2020, which just go to their website, download it. It's a fascinating read. Basically, they're saying that within 3 years, I think 42% of the workforce are going to have to significantly reskill. So organizations have to reskill their employees, and employees want to pick up new skills. So everyone's winning here. But so it's about initiating programs whereby you manage skills effectively within your organization, which isn't easy. So you need to have a picture of what skills have you got, where are the skills gaps, and then initiate programs that not only learning, it's about what we're seeing organizations doing is using sort of talent marketplaces whereby they're not changing jobs, their job stays the same, but they change what they work on. It's kind of like internal gigs or projects. And you do the matching of who works on what gig or project using skills. And people work on these gigs not only to contribute to their business, but also as stretch assignments to build up new skills. So there's a lot of work going on around reskilling the workforce, initiating programs that are, effectively allow organizations to see where the gaps are and then fill those gaps using a number of different tools to do that. It's not just a video for learning, right? There's much more to it than that. So those would be two. I mean, the other two, obviously, diversity and inclusion, top priority for everyone. Every organization I talk to in Europe, it's a top priority. I haven't found one where it's not. So that's fantastic. That wouldn't have been the case a couple of years ago. It was important, but it wasn't top priority. It now is top priority everywhere.
It's interesting how fiery you speak about the potential for growth and the opportunities that are there, because in the Peakon research, I saw that the young people actually saying they feel a bit stifled in their growth at the moment. So I'm just keen from Nicola to hear what her take is on the growth of the individuals in our organization. What is your strategy for the next couple of years? If I want to ask, maybe that's a too big a question, but maybe you can comment on it.
Yeah, so what Richard was saying is spot on, and that's also where we're taking our whole talent management framework, is to actually use skills as a strategy. What the pandemic really taught us is, and I think while we were still in the pandemic, a lot of our units, while they were previously operating as silos, so if you were assigned, for example, in the water unit, you were typically working on projects that in the water unit. But I think with the pandemic disrupting some of the project sites that we had and projects being on hold, it created an opportunity where we said, well, we have these resources available. How can we actually use the resources in some of the other teams? So automatically, like you mentioned, you still actually remain in the position that you were originally appointed, but you are actually secondment internally in the company, and that improved the internal mobility quite a bit. And there's lots of lessons learned during the pandemic, and a lot of success stories as well, where staff members actually said they enjoyed the stretch assignment and actually getting to know some of the other areas of the business that they weren't previously part of. So I think it's that continuously, but ultimately you also need to create a culture where staff members are continuously encouraged to improve their skills and to learn on the job and to take on more responsibility. So I think that was also a fundamental design decision for us as a business, is to say, let's consider adopting that change that happened as a result of the pandemic, but use it to the better and actually incorporate that into our culture going forward.
Thanks, Nicola. And a couple of comments in the chat about it would be nice to have that Peakon report split out for geographies, either countries or continents. And I think Richard said that's maybe on the cards for the future. And obviously, if more companies start working with Workday, there'll be more data being fed in that as well. So I can encourage everyone to go that route for that reason alone.
Yeah, Joel, I would say, everyone start using Peakon, and then we'll have much more data to tell.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So speaking of technology, yesterday, some Robert Kruger, who was one of the registrants for this webinar, asked me if we were going to be tackling the role of technology in managing employee expectations, and of course we've spoken about that quite a lot already. The role that technology can play, but just want to maybe zoom in a little bit more and ask Nicola, how are you currently using technology, and what are your plans?
Yeah, so a system supporting your employee initiatives is a game changer. And in our experience, having one cloud-based system to manage all aspects of the employee journey really helps with engagement and improve the adoption rates as well. It also reduces the time that you would spend on integrating and maintaining various systems. So we embarked on our digital transformation journey in 2015 when we started with our Workday deployment. And that was really the perfect opportunity for us to review some of our employees' expectations of each touch point in the employee journey with us, and to really create that moments that matter. So we also adopted Richard Brand's saying that you need to train employees well enough so that they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. And this starts right at that moment when candidates consider choosing Zutari as a chapter in their career journeys. So we extensively use online platforms as an enabler to create brand awareness and position us as an employer of choice to attract talent to our company. The days, for example, where we visited campuses to attract emerging talent to our business is long gone, and digital platforms and supporting those students throughout the process is currently made possible through technology. So you also asked about some of the practical use of technology. So let me share some specific examples that we use to create that moments of matter in our tech journey. So, for example, we changed our employment contracts to visual contracts. And by doing that, we removed all the legal jargon and legalistic words from 4,000 words down to 400. And we included illustrations and to explain concepts and improve the reader's understanding. By rolling out the visual contracts, we are setting the tone for what employees can expect of us as a company, but also what we will be expecting from our employees. We've removed all paperwork from our processes, with all requests, forms, and documents now being done digitally. Not long ago, we were still doing leave applications by pen and paper. And just in the last 12 months, in Workday, we had 150,000 leave requests. Just imagine what that would have been like if we didn't have a system supporting that. Now that we have the data, you combine that with the HR data, add IT application usage, as well as our resource planning tool. And now we were actually enabling managers to manage their utilization and the productivity of their teams. And as we all know, now with the hybrid working arrangements, a line manager will now know exactly who will be in the office on which day, so that he can actually schedule those collaboration sessions that he might want to do with his team during that time. So I think technology is literally a game changer, and you need to have the right software in place to support those initiatives. Otherwise, you're going to not be working smarter, but really much harder.
Thanks, Nicola. And Richard, we know from you that you are obviously our technology evangelist. So I'm not going to ask you if people should be using tech, because your answer is going to be yes. But maybe just chat to us about the tech applications that you find most relevant and exciting, especially sort of going forward.
Yeah. So I think the big trend at the moment is, if we look at that Maslow's hierarchy again, you've got, you need to do the basics well, so self-service, booking holidays, and so on. But I think, as I talked about, that's not enough. You need to leverage the technology to sort of elevate the employee up that hierarchy, right? And how will you do that? I think it's about what we're calling data infused applications. So, and we have data infused applications in our personal lives with the consumer apps we use, right? Where they have all this data so that they predict how we want to use the system. They push content to us that they predict is going to be more interesting. They make suggestions and so on. I think in our enterprise applications, in our HR applications, we need to be doing that same thing. And that will engage the employee. It will make the HR tech relevant to them. It will increase adoption levels, right? So that's something at Workday that we've been working on for a number of years, and we make suggestions around. We think, what about this learning course for you, or what about this job? And it's not just like random suggestions; it's actually targeted based upon the underlying data. I also think the way in which we interact with the tech is changing. With, for instance, things like chatbots. I love. We've released a chatbot within Workday, which is part of the standard solution, and the employees love it. It's not so they don't have to navigate around an application to find out, okay, where do I go to book my holiday? I can just type in normal language, I'd like to book holiday, and then the chatbot says, okay, which dates? And you enter the dates, and it says, okay, right. What type of absence is this? And then it gives you a drop down, and then you say, yeah, that's all right, I confirm that, and then the chatbot takes care of triggering the business process, and I can do that on my phone by talking to Workday, or so I think that's also quite exciting. And then the final thing I would say is we recognize at Workday that employees are not in Workday all the time. But where they are now all the time is in these collaboration spaces. So they're in things like Microsoft Teams, or they're in Slack, or or they're on their mobile. So it's really important that all of this functionality is available on an app on the mobile. But if they're in Teams, we're opening up Workday, or in Slack, we're opening up Workday so that from those collaboration spaces, they don't have to log out and go into Workday to book a holiday. They can do that directly from Teams, right? So it's about getting these applications able to talk to each other. And we call that sort of a strategy of Workday everywhere. We want people to be able to leverage Workday wherever they are. So yeah, it's about simplifying access and increasing adoption with these data infused applications, because employees that aren't desperate to log into a HR application, are they? You have to be honest about that, particularly the older ones, which are a nightmare to use. So, we're looking to deliver value to employees, and that value is through helping them grow. And we help them grow by creating a curated, personalized, contextual experience. That's our direction of travel, and that's what excites me. Yeah.
I think if you had your way, Workday would pop up when you switch your phone on in the morning. But it definitely sounds quite practical. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, and maybe just the one from Karima, thanking you as well, Nicola, for your insights. She's asking, you can talk a little bit about how you raise your brand awareness to attract talent. Obviously, we don't always have to say it, but in a changed world, in the new normal, post-COVID.
Yeah, so because we are rebranding as Doherty, we actually want to put the name out there and also become known as a company that employ employees for their eminence and for the impact that they make within the societies. So what we've done is we actually make use of a lot of social media platforms to actually get word out. So especially with the new ads or the new positions that we have available, we literally have a network of employees within the company that we call our culture carriers to actually get the word out and share on their networks with their networks and their contacts. And then the other thing is, I think it's always good to put our hand up and to get involved in the community. And that's also how you create your brand and create the type of culture and then you'll be able to attract the talent that you want to come to your organization. I must also comment on what Richard has said. The war on talent is really hotting up, because if you can work from anywhere, the competition is literally, then anyone can do the job. So we've seen that quite a bit. So the normal ways of engaging employees on employment contracts is not necessarily the first and foremost option. So we've actually had to look at other employment models as well as consultancy models to actually be able to attract talent to Doherty.
Just give us a tip. What if I want to have the best employee engineer possible on my team? Obviously, I can pay him more money than all the others. But what are some of the other tricks?
Well, definitely, you need to create an exciting opportunity for him. Have the exciting projects for him to work on, the stretch assignments. So even though he might already be an expert in his field, I think the exposure within the industry, and it also depends on the person. So if he is already, like we mentioned, an expert within the industry, it's actually giving him the opportunity, for example, to mentor younger staff members and to actually still create a career that's fulfilling for him in the role that he'll be fulfilling with us.
Thanks, Nicola. I think there was a question earlier about wellness that I just wanted to quickly tag on. I think it was mostly, it was from Rory Richards, and you were talking about the embraced section of the pyramid, and he was sort of wondering how wellness fits into that. So maybe just having studied the Peakon report, maybe you can just talk a little bit about the position that wellness takes in that report.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of position the wellness more one level down, as being a basic need rather than being embraced. But that's just how I did it. That's my opinion, and as with all these sort of models, you can kind of bend them into the shape you want them to be. But for me, yeah, the wellness was, I see that more of a basic need, right? Particularly in the last year or so, it's been absolutely fundamental. We need to cover that, and we've seen all the programs. For me, being embraced was more, it's that love and belonging. It's about feeling a part of something. It's about feeling I have a voice. It's, so that's just the way I did it. But you can interpret it in different ways.
Just it must be such an exciting project, Nicola, sort of demerging from a global organization and almost shaping and molding your own brand. Maybe a little bit scary as well. But I just wanted to ask you, looking back and now looking forward, what are sort of the things that you've learned from and that you want to do differently when it comes to employee engagement? Not saying that what Oricon did on a global level was wrong, but where you're really making some choices and say, as Zutari, this is what we stand for, and this is how we do things.
I think for Zutari, we actually want to create a culture that people get things done. We employ you to become a solutionist, so you take charge and you get things done. So what we had to change, and this is a design decision that we are taking, is to go back to the drawing board and sometimes just to trim back the business processes to the vanilla version once again. So I think we've grown and added a lot of trimmings and toppings, but eventually it actually just adds to the complexity, and it make a business process a lot longer than it could be. So I think for us as Zutari, we are going back to basics, simplifying business processes, but also creating a business process that's still resilient and that could still fit various models and units. So that's some of the learnings that we had, and the opportunity that we now have is to actually re-look at some of those business design decisions and see whether they are still fit for purpose 5 years down the line.
Simple, no bells and whistles. That appeals to me. We are through our time. So before I thank you and the attendees, Richard, any sort of last thoughts from your side? Things that we should have touched on in the script that I previously shared on the screen.
I mean, I think my main takeaway was when we look at the 4 key findings from the Great Expectations report from Peakon. All 4 of them map onto that Maslow's hierarchy, right? And they map onto your employee experience. So I don't think there should have been any surprises there, but it's good that actually there's data, a huge volume of data that it supports, that proposition that you need to focus on those 4 areas. And I would just say, the whole area of intelligent listening, continuous listening, it's really matured in the last sort of 12 months. That's why we acquired Peakon, because the technology is fantastic. But I think, you need to elevate the employee voice, and you need technology to do that. Annual surveys are dead. You need to move to continuous listening. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I can't wait to come back to South Africa, really, genuinely. So, but anyway, so keep safe, everyone, and thank you.
Welcome soon, Richard. Any last thoughts from your side, Nicola?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it was really good listening to Richard share some of the learnings as well. We always keep an eye on those reports. Yeah, thank you very much. And if there are any specific questions on any of the initiatives, please feel free to reach out to me personally.
Fantastic. And then I'm also going to thank all the attendees. And if you do want to get hold of Richard or Nicola, and you don't have their details, please drop me a note and I'll put you in touch. Obviously, you're looking at their faces very big on the screen again. These were the 2 experts that you were listening to in the last hour. Thanks very much for joining, and thanks to Workday for making it possible. The next webinar is tomorrow, and is everything you need to know about the vaccine rollout. So that's pretty current and important. So if you do have another hour available tomorrow at 2 o'clock, then you'll be very well advised to join that one. If you're not registered yet, you can pop over to our website, chro.co.za/events, and register for that one. And with having said that, I'm going to once again thank the panelists, thank the attendees, thank Workday, and thank everyone. Bye-bye.